Hey YouTubians, back at it again with this old. I'm just going to do everything I can to get this cleaned up. I want to get all this old sealant out of here on this side too, so that we're sealing up our oil reservoir. Get all the sealant cleared up off of all my mating surfaces, and then make sure the inside of our cylinder here is squeaky clean. There's a little bit of carbon built up down there, but I don't think there's enough to worry about. I've scrubbed on it a little bit, trying to get your hand or anything else down in there. I know guys make mandrels and sand and everything like that, but I just don't see enough down there to worry about, so I'm not gonna put her back together. All right, this is where it pays to have some patience. When you go to scrubbing on this, I use just good old green Scotch-Brite and a good old green can of Brake Clean, whatever you get there. I am not using the knife on this, and a guy might be tempted to use a razor blade. I would recommend not. I think that it's real easy to start gouging out metal. You want these mating surfaces to mate up as perfectly as possible. So turn on some tunes and just get ready to spend some time on this. It's worth it. It's worth it to use that Scotch-Brite. See, this side I've got pretty squeaky clean. Looks pretty good. Now, down where my crank bearings are going to sit, those need to get cleaned up. See, I kind of started working over here. Looks pretty good. I've got more silicone to remove. Just make sure you're taking your time on this. It's worth it. I don't think I'd be using any hard metal to try to scrape this or cut it away. All right, hours later, not even joking, my mating surfaces are nice and clean. You'll notice there isn't any metal gouged out for where I got impatient and used a razor blade. As tempting as it may be, so that looks pretty good. Our engine pan, also looking pretty good. All that silicone. I'm going to go back. I have learned this camera sees better than I do. I'm actually going to go back and watch this footage. Now, I'm concerned with my mating surfaces right now. I haven't done any final cleaning to make sure there's no grit or anything in my bottom end or in the cylinder. That's going to come after what I'm going to do next. Now, this right here is a piece of granite that I got for free. Any flooring store or surface, you know, countertop, flooring, whatever, they'll usually have remnant pieces. This one only weighs about 175 pounds. It's what they had, and the price was right. I haven't bothered to cut it down to the actual size that I need, so it's not like I can't use the exercise, so I just pack it around. So what I'm going to do, and some people might consider this overkill, and I wouldn't necessarily argue with them. I did scrub at this pretty hard with my Scotch-Brite. I don't think there is any way that stuff is going to remove metal, but what I am going to do is make sure that my mating surfaces are flat. The only thing we've got here is a Moto Seal gasket. I want to make sure I'm giving every chance that I can to make sure we're getting a good seal. So I'm going to make good and sure I'm working with flat surfaces, both sides. And I'm really going to want to focus on these thin areas to make sure I don't have any gaps. Obviously, I'm not going to be sanding in the bearing pocket, so take it easy with a marker. Okay, now this is simple. I'm not applying a huge amount of pressure. In fact, my first few strokes are going to be nice and light. This is a wet, dry sandpaper. I'm not really sure that it matters what kind you use. Just make sure you have a good flat surface that you're doing it on. And I'm going to make sure I'm doing my best to apply even pressure and just work in a figure-8 pattern. Cutting the weight of my piece here. And this is 320 grit sandpaper, by the way. And to me, this cleaned up so you guys can see it. To me, all of my marks are now gone except one little piece right there. So I'm going to give this a couple more strokes and see if that goes away. If not, I mean, this is what's going to really be doing the sealing here. But since we're here, we're going to go the distance. I'm liking that. I'm liking that a lot. Okay, next. And really, it shouldn't be much more than that. If you're having to do a whole bunch of grinding, you need to check your surface or figure out what else went wrong. These shouldn't warp that bad. So we'll take a look at our marks. Do the same thing with this guy. All I'm going to do is just dab the water off so that you guys see I'm not erasing the marks. I'm liking what I see there. Again, I have learned this phone sees better than I do. I'm going to actually go back and look at this footage to make sure I'm not missing anything. If I do, I'll check back with you. I also like the fact this 320 isn't leaving big gouges, but you can see in the light, we've got some light scuff marks. And in my mind, that's given me a good surface for my gasket maker, my Moto Seal, to adhere to and take a good bite into it. So now is the super fun, and again, more tedious stuff. I went ahead and got me a case of brake clean parts cleaner, because we're going to use as much as it takes so that when I put this together, I'm going to run a paper towel up and down in there a whole bunch. And if it doesn't come back absolutely immaculately clean, we're going to keep doing it until it does. And then when it does, we'll assemble. So I'll get back with you once I get her clean. I'll show you guys some of the fun involved with these smaller saws. And I don't even necessarily have big mitts, but you'll do some of that trying to get in there. I especially want to get into, because I pulled kind of a bonehead move earlier when I was doing all this work cleaning this stuff up. I should have been smart and shoved a paper towel or 10 down in there to close that cylinder up, but that's all right. We live and learn. I really want to make sure that I'm getting every little tiny piece of anything at all out of this cylinder. Now you'll notice there's some goodies here. That's leftover silicone or sealant, whatever it is that they used to seal this up before. It's been there for the last 30 years. I bet you it'll be there for another and be just fine. That stuff's kind of gooey anyway. I bet you it'll go out the muffler. So, and also this part was kind of interesting. Now I want to make sure, if I can get her to focus here, let's get right up in here. I want to make sure I don't have any pieces of carbon hanging out in my exhaust port. So, and it looks right there at the port, I think is okay. I may do a little bit more and try to clean this up, but I'm not seeing anything that I would consider scary for what I know. And on the inside there, if I can get you a look at it, focus, focus, nope, maybe, nope, yep, nope. Well, kind of trying to show you guys this port from the inside. I'm not seeing anything that's alarming. And if you can get a finger in there to feel about, your fingers will tell you, my fingers will tell me more than my eyes will tend. I'll just chat with you guys as I find things to note. Actually, let me go get the hose. So this is your engine pan, right? It sits on the bottom of your cylinder. An interesting item of note on these saws is their oiler runs off the pulse of the saw. So you can see here we have a small port coming through, and this is where your oiler mounts. So the pulse comes through your engine pan and operates a diaphragm. We're going to look at that before we install that on the saw to make sure that diaphragm is still working correctly. Now, something else that I noticed on this saw, I want to make good and sure that the port for your oil pickup, your oil hose slips onto this nipple and it comes through here. I have already taken some brake clean and shot it through here, and I shot it through there good. Make sure we've got a good clean port. And this is the oil hose and your screen that all goes together into your oil reservoir, which seals on this surface here. I'm also going to sand this surface and the surface of the oil reservoir. We're going to clean that up to make sure we don't have any oil leaks as well. But I want to make sure that it's got as easy time as possible picking up oil. This, as you can imagine, was totally gummed up. Thankfully, my brake clean, it goes right in there. So I hosed that out until it was coming through there absolutely effortlessly. So we've got a good clean pickup screen. Theoretically, if the diaphragm's not junk, we should have oil. All right, for the 300th time. Clean. All right, being that I'm still an apprentice at YouTube University, talking to Tin Man about this piston a little bit. He said it looked beautiful and those ring looks just fine. Put it back together and quit crying. So that's what we're doing. It looked like there was a little bit of blow by to me, but I haven't taken apart very many of these old McCullochs, so I'm still not exactly sure what looks good and what don't. So what I like to do, it might be a little bit overkill, but I'll get a little 2-stroke oil on the tip of a screwdriver and hit my bearings. I've already done these, got my wrist pin. I already did it to my big end bearing down here. It's not good to start these saws dry, so I'm going to get some 2-stroke oil, put it on my piston, some 2-stroke oil, put it in my cylinder, clean my hands off, and then glue up my mating surfaces and get her back together. I already dry fit everything once. It all went. So, of course, once I get my moto seal on here, something's going to go wrong. That's the way it goes. All right. Let's get a little bit of 2-stroke on the old finger. Finger's clean after all the cleaning that we did in this cylinder. I don't want to have a dirty hand and get a bunch of dirt back in here. I did forget to mention, I did get my new seals on. These are new. I did put some 2-stroke oil on the rubbers for the seals and the crankshaft, so those slid on nice and easy. When you slide your seals on, especially when you have, I don't know if you guys can see that little step right there. When you go to push your seal on, it's really easy to prolapse that seal. There's a spring. Why don't I just show you guys? Everything's going to come falling apart. There's that spring inside of these seals. You want to make sure if you have to go over a step like this, that you're real careful about how that goes. Let me see if I can do it working around the camera here. Kind of give it a little twist, and then it just goes right on. I can still see my spring in there, and we're golden. Okay. And I don't think it's going to hurt anything at all if the outer part of this seal touches that bearing, because that's not the part that's going to be spinning. So this stuff's even better than peanut butter. Once you open the cap on this, it gets everywhere. Make sure you got a decently even coat. You don't have to have it super thick, but the way this is sealed up, I'll make sure I get it on evenly on all the surface area. And if I get lots of squeeze out on this, that's fine. I like to see some squeeze out to know that I got a good coat. And I'm going to give kind of one of these numbers right here and right there, so there's a little bit of extra. That's where your two pieces of metal are coming together for your mating surfaces. I'm going to have a little bit of extra there to fill whatever void there might be. I've had this tube for a couple years now. When you originally get this stuff, it's pretty runny. I like it. Me and Tin Man were talking about this the other day. This stuff does a little bit better. Once you've had it for a while, it gets a little goopier and less runny. And again, I'm probably overkilling this by putting it on both surfaces. Lots of times you can get away with just putting it on one, but I really want to make sure I get a good seal. And having some squeeze out here is not going to hurt anything. If it squeezes out in that bottom end, it's not going to go anywhere. It's not going to hurt anything. Okay. I'll make sure that I get a good portion of it in them bearing pockets. That way those seals are good and sealed up. Long cap. All right. And this is where you're always going to have fun with your piston rings. You could put this together, dry running it as many times as you want to, and when you have your moto seal setting up, that's when you're going to run into the fun. If I can find, I'm trying to find my index pins here. There's one. There's the other. All right, I'm going to do my best not to play in my moto seal here. make sure that the correct bearing is on the correct side, and it is. I'll make sure that my seal is in where it belongs. It is. Okay. I want to make sure that I move this needle bearing out so that it's sitting in that pocket correctly. Bring this up a little bit and get that bearing out. That's not how you do that. Okay, well that's just where that's going to go. I'll do my best to make sure, eyeball this and make sure my seal's sitting in there good and square so it doesn't get all cockeyed on me. Okay, that looks about right. Look at my seals again to make sure that they are actually in where they belong as far as they need to go. And they are in. Okay. This part's easy to forget, but it's extremely important. These holes go through into your bottom end for your head bolts. You need to make sure you goop these head bolts and make sure these holes are good and sealed. Otherwise, you're going to have a transfer between your bottom end into your oil reservoir and vice versa. So you want to avoid that. Thanks for the tip on that, Tin Man. And I want to make sure this is Guten tight. And I don't want to give it any more than that. Now what I'm looking for is squeeze out. I want to see squeeze out a little bit all the way around, and I'm especially liking if I get a little bit more in my corners. I can see a little squeeze out all the way around that seal. Yep. Okay. I think I like it. All right. She's sealed up. And then, just to make sure that I don't have anything bound up, I want to spin that crank by hand, make sure that it's spinning free. And it is. I like it. All right, I've gone ahead and wet sanded this surface. This surface, I'm not gonna pull that nipple out. So when I bolt this thing up, if I don't see good squeeze out all the way around, I'll just go ahead and take it apart again. Didn't have to remove very much material at all on this to get it where it was supposed to go. So okay, I'm gonna make sure that my flywheel side is on the flywheel side, and we're gonna go ahead and give this a good dose of goop too. I'm gonna clean my hands off here a little bit. Clean your hands off on a dirty rag. Sure hope this thing fires up. I had some carburetor gasket issues, as we talked about earlier on in the video. I ended up finding some IPLs on this saw, more specifically the carburetor, and I ordered the kit that has what looks to be the correct gasket. So we're gonna install that. Before I glue everything together, I'm going to put Moto Seal on every single surface that could possibly give us an air leak here. This isn't going to give an air leak to the engine between the oil reservoir and the motor, but I also don't want to have bar oil leaking out everywhere. So we'll do what we can to fix that. Keep that from happening. I don't like leaks. I'm kind of a snob that way, I guess. I'm a little bit particular with my equipment. Leaks of any kind bother me a lot, especially after I've gone done and rebuilt something. If it leaks, we got issues. Can't deal with it. Okay, we've got both surfaces gooped. Now, I suppose we better hook this up, and it's a good thing that I already have it clean. Boy, wouldn't now be a bad time for that to break. We'll give one up to the saw gods on that one. Okay, my key, my coil, flywheel side is correct, so we'll finagle our oil hose in here. I'm going to try to not move this around too much until I get some bolts in here. As much as I can on these saws, I really like to start fasteners by hand wherever possible. Stripping threads is a bummer. Yeah, I think I like that better. That's what we do. Maybe that's better without the extension. Let's see what that looks like. Oh, come on, baby. I don't think this requires that many ugga-duggas. I don't like how that fits on there. I like that less. Yeah, I don't like that. We're not going for it. That's good. 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 And for the last one, who's this guy? Okay. Looks to me like I'm seeing a pretty good squeeze out all the way around. So we should have a good seal there. So as much as I want to thrash through this and finish bolting this up and start it up today, I got to be patient and make sure that sealant, that my Moto Seal has enough time to set up. I'm going to be taking this home inside with me tonight to make sure that it's warm and that Moto Seal has a good opportunity to set up the way it's supposed to. So from here on, everything on the intake side is going to take Moto Seal. I can't be sure where the air leak's coming from, but I know that I don't want to give it any opportunity, so I'm going to make sure this is good and chemically clean, and we'll start building on it from there.